contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where my husband spent the last 2+ decades of his life. So Mesa just shared his story about our relationship a little bit, and I decided that I need to share mine. So I've told this story 1,000 times, and it's a little emotional. I'm going to try not to cry, and if we do, I'll edit that out. Anyways, so 2005, I was living in Seattle. Actually, I was living in San Diego, but I had gone to Seattle to work with a friend of mine. I was learning how to tattoo. I'd been piercing already for 7 years or something, and I'd been tattooing for a couple of years, but not really consistently. So I had been living in San Diego, and I was in a 7-year relationship. And I went to Seattle just with the thought that I would be there for 6 or 8 months to concentrate on tattooing, and then I would either go back to San Diego or my partner would move to Seattle, or we might move somewhere else. So while I was in Seattle, my mom calls me, and she tells me that she wants me to do this pen pal program, or this program, as a mitzvah, which is a good deed. So I was raised Jewish. My mom converted to Judaism when I was 4, and she was into it. So, I went to synagogue every Friday night. I went to Hebrew school Wednesdays and Mondays, and I had Sunday school. And I had my bat mitzvah, I had my confirmation when I was 17. Like, my mom was into it. So when I was 16, though, we moved to Denver from Albuquerque, and we pretty much quit going to synagogue. I don't know if you're religious, if you've ever been in any churches or anything. Sometimes when you change the congregation, it just doesn't feel the same. You can't find that thing that kept you going back all the time. So I'm in Seattle, and my mom calls me. She wants me to do this program as a mitzvah. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it? She says, well, it's this program that keeps Jews on the inside in touch with Jews on the outside. I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, prison. I'm like, no, I don't fucking know. Like, why am I going to write somebody in prison? And the way that she presented it it sounded like a Bible study or something to me. And so I tell her, what do I have to talk to somebody about Judaism? Like, I haven't been to synagogue in 13 years. I have a more pagan-based belief system. Like, I don't even consider myself Jewish anymore. And she's like, they don't care. They're just looking for somebody to talk to. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And she's like, well, I have 3 pen pals. So I tell her, fine, send me the information. So I fill out the information online, and I pretty much told them what I just told you. I was raised Jewish, but that I don't practice. And so they gave me 3 pen pals who are also not Jewish. And I normally talk about the other 2, but we'll just skip over them. And actually, no, I got these 3 pen pals, and I wrote them all just the same first letter. And it just said, hey, my name is Laura. I am a body piercer, and I'm learning how to tattoo. I'm living in Seattle, and that I got your information from the Alpha Institute. They seem to think that we have something in common or something to talk about. And that was it. It was real short. It was just a little Halloween card. And so I get a response from all 3 pen pals. The first one, I think his name was Stanley, but he was in New York. He was kind of older. This was 2005. He was like an older black guy, 2005. All he wanted to talk about was George W. Bush and the war. And I had no conversation for him. I just was not politically inclined at the time. And, there wasn't anything wrong with him, but I didn't know what to talk to him about. And so I ended up writing the Alpha Institute and telling him that, and asked them to just give him somebody new. And then the second kid, his name was Taiwan, Ty-Juan, and he was in Illinois. And his letters look like a 13-year-old girl wrote them. All bubbly with the circles above the eyes. And he signs off his first letter, take care, sexy. And I write back and I'm like, hey, I'm doing this as a mitzvah. If this is the kind of correspondence you're looking for, that's cool. It's just not with me. And he writes back and he says, oh, I know how to treat a lady, believe that. And so, I wrote him a couple of letters, and then I didn't hear from him for a long time. And when I did hear from him again, he's like, hey, I'm so sorry that I haven't written. They sent me to Chicago for my court date, and I didn't have my property, so I didn't have your address. But I'm getting out next year, and I never want to lose contact with you again. So here's my dad's phone number. He's expecting a phone call from you. I never wrote back. Like I cannot fucking, what the hell is this guy talking about? And so the third letter was from Mesa. And the tone was just completely different. I had mentioned, in my letter that we might have something in common or something to talk about. And he comes back and he's like, I don't know that we're going to have anything in common or anything to talk about. And quite honestly, I'm surprised I heard from someone. But I guess I'm willing to give it a try. And then, the attitude is like, why are you even writing somebody in prison? What's wrong with you? And it wasn't so blunt as that, but, that was kind of the feeling. It wasn't desperate, It was just, he was suspicious, and that was interesting. That's intriguing, okay? So when I wrote, it was the end of September. And I always go see my family for Thanksgiving. So the week before Thanksgiving, my little brother finds out that he has testicular cancer. And he's got 2 little kids. He's got a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old at the time. And his dad had died of leukemia when he was 5. I was 9, so he was 5. And so when we found out that my brother had cancer, it was just really emotional. And I had decided that I was going to go back to San Diego to be with my relationship. I didn't want to be alone anymore. And then a week before I was going back, we broke up over the phone. And I didn't want to be in Seattle still. So I ended up moving back to Denver, which is where my family lives. And it took me a little while to find a job. I had a job in Seattle. I had a job in San Diego. But, I'm a brand new tattooer. And anyways, it took me a little bit of time. I got a job. And I had just been writing him on the computer at the studio because I think that my handwriting isn't great, and then my spelling is practically worse than that. So I had to get a job and start working, and I got a little bit of money, and I bought a laptop to be able to write Mesa. And just to give you an idea, I don't care about electronics. I never bought a TV until 2020 when we got shut down. So I get this laptop and I start writing him again. And it's been a couple months. And so he responds and he's like, oh, I thought that I might have said something wrong. I'm glad to hear from you. And once I realized that the letters were taking forever to get back and forth because they were, like, I could write him directly, but the Alpha Institute, the way that they had it set up was that he would then write this P.O. box in Florida. And then the contents of the P.O. box would go to New Zealand, which is where these people from the Alpha Institute were. And then they would repackage it and send it to me. That way he didn't have my address. And so when I realized that this was like delaying his letters by 2-3 weeks, I gave him the address to my studio. And it was interesting. It was really fun. You're just sharing with somebody who doesn't know you. And in that way, you're able to just say whatever. You just tell them really the truth. You just putting it out there. If they accept you, they accept you. If they don't, they don't. Like, who do they matter anyways? Like, you don't even know them. And But I would get these letters at my studio and everybody want to hear the letter. Everybody wants to hear my response. And it started becoming like a weekly thing. Every day I'm looking for the mailman. I'm looking for the mailman. And he ended up moving to Beaumont, Texas. And I get this beautiful letter. And the letter's talking about his trip there and how they flew over Austin, Texas. And that it was like so green and beautiful. And he hoped one day that he could live in a place like that. You know, that had this beautiful river running through it. And he says, but now I don't know where I'm at. There's just a bunch of, what are those called? Tumbleweeds. And so I got my computer. I'm like, I'm going to tell him where he's at. I look up Beaumont, Texas. You know, I just want to tell him, you know, you're 4 miles from the ocean. So while I'm looking at the city, though, there's this tattoo shop that pops up. And it was owned by Gil Monty. I can't think of the name of the studio anymore. But Gil Monty used to be a pretty famous tattooer. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I could move to Beaumont, Texas, go see Mesa in prison, go work for Gil Monty. And I just had to be like, whoa. It's like, slow down. Like, what the hell are you talking about? You cannot just up and move to go see some dude in prison. And so not too long after that, he asked me for my phone number. And I was like, no way. I can't talk to you on the phone. Like, I'm already too wrapped up in this. Like, I can't do all that. And it was so intense, you know, just, I already had crazy thoughts. There wasn't any way I could talk to him. So during this same time, this kid came to my studio to learn how to pierce, and I ended up teaching him. Well, we ended up getting into a relationship. And I had dated some other people, you know, in the time that I was already speaking to or talking to Mesa. You know, I dated maybe 2 other people before this kid. And anyways, his name's Matt. And Matt and I end up moving to Las Vegas. And once we live in Las Vegas, I work with him and I live with him. We're together 24/7. And he had seen me. I had asked Mesa to draw me a tattoo. And I got it tattooed over here. And I mean, for real, I got it in that location pretty much so I could send him a boob shot. And Matt saw me getting this tattoo. Matt saw the letters coming in and out. Matt heard me say, I'm practically in love with somebody I don't even know. And when we started dating, he had told me, look, I'm not going to ask you to quit writing him because I know he makes you happy. And when I got involved with Matt, I had wrote Mesa and I was like, look, I started dating somebody I really like, and I don't want him to feel any kind of way if he picked up one of your letters. So let's just keep it platonic. And there wasn't really anything in the letters anyways. You know, he was just addressing the letters, hey, beautiful. And so that was one of the things that he stopped doing. He said, yeah, of course, I'm always going to respect your relationships. I want you to be happy. And so we moved to Las Vegas, and I started feeling awkward. You know, I wasn't really doing anything wrong, but for some reason I felt like I was cheating on both of them. I didn't want to talk to either one about the other, and it hadn't been like that before. You know, I was telling Mesa all about these people that I was dating. I was telling the people I was dating all about Mesa. And but now this time there was something different. And I would get a letter from Mesa and I would go to write him, and Matt might walk over and see what I was doing, and he'd be like, oh, I'll be back. It was just awkward, right? So my letters started becoming less and less frequent. And I was always sending him books, so he knew that I was still around. But one time I got this letter, and he's telling me about how sick he is, and that he was so sick that he had to go to the infirmary or whatever you call it, and that the nurse was like really making him concerned because she's like, oh man, like you're in really bad condition. And he's like, what? Just tell me what it is. Tell me what it is. And in his letter, he says, she finally tells me that I'm suffering from heartache. And that the cure for that is a letter from me. And he's always doing all these little cute letters that are just surprising in a way, really endearing. He's very charismatic. I mean, you all know this already. So Matt is from Mississippi, and Matt's dad had to move an hour away for work. So he wanted to move to Mississippi to be with his mom so she wasn't alone. So we moved to Mississippi, and I know the first day that I was there, I wrote him a letter giving him the address to my new studio. And then I had to have written him again because I changed studios. So I gave him a new address. And then I think a year went by that I didn't respond to any of his letters. I was still sending him books, but I would get his letters, and really what I was hiding my response to these letters. Like I get a letter in the mail, and especially if there was a photo inside, my heart would just start pounding, and I would feel a little flustered, and I wouldn't want Matt to see me like this. So before we moved to Mississippi, or when I first started writing Mesa, I had kept all of our letters in a 3-ring binder in those plastic sheets, like my letter, his letter, my letter, his letter. And I had done it innocently at first. It was just, I wanted to be able to go back and reference what we were talking about. I didn't want to be repeating myself. But during this time in Mississippi, I'm just like reading letters as fast as I can and throwing them in this Barnes & Noble bag on the floor next to the dresser. Like, oh, that's not important. But every day I'm thinking, I gotta write him. But I just can't. I can't find the time to sit down and like just dedicate my thoughts and my energy to him, because I have this other person who I'm also considering their feelings. So finally, after a year or so, I get a letter at the P.O. box that the books are billed to. And the letter says, I know I'm probably not supposed to be writing you here, but I needed to give it one more chance before I gave up on you. Like, I don't even know if you're at the same studio anymore, if you're getting my letters. And so I immediately write him back, and I'm like, hey, no, you can't write me at that P.O. box. And it wasn't that big of a deal because I check the mail every day. And, but, I didn't need my dude's mom to ask me about it. So he tells me that he had to go running for the mailroom again because he was sending me a package. It was the first thing he sent me, and it was these kind of origami roses. I still have them. They're at my studio. But so he goes running for the mailroom, and he says, yeah, I had to go get the box, so I didn't send it. And we started talking again. We started writing each other back and forth again. And I went and I got my 3-ring binder, and I started reading it to my best friend in Mississippi. And it was like falling in love all over again. Because I'm reliving each letter, telling her about it. And I never really felt like our letters were inappropriate until I asked him if he had any kids or if he wanted kids. And he told me that he didn't know if he had a kid or not. I found out much later that he had a girlfriend when he went to prison, and she told him that she was pregnant, but she never sent him any photos of the baby, would never bring the baby to see him. And I found out much later from my mother-in-law, she said that, no, I saw the girl in the store with the baby, and that's not Mesa's baby. But for 14 years, Mesa's going around thinking it's possible he's got a baby. Well, anyways, he tells me, I don't know if I have any kids or not, but I've always wanted to be a father. And one day I hope that I could have a daughter. And I would name her Harmony, because I think she would bring harmony into my life. And then he goes on to describe her, and it's like a combination of the two of us. And so anyway, some weeks are going by, and he writes me another letter, and he's telling me about this dream that he had. So in the dream, he's in the grocery store. You know those old school shelves where you can see through to the other aisle? He says, in the other aisle, I can see this flash of red go by, and I know it's you. So he's like running down the hall trying to get around. Of course, it never ends. He's trying to climb over, but it's all the way to the ceiling. And so when he just realizes he's stuck in the aisle, he just sits down on the floor. And once he's on the floor, he's inside a cage. I imagine like a little dog kennel or something. He says, once he's inside the cage, I start walking down the aisle towards him. And I'm looking directly at him, but he says, with no recognition in my eyes. And so when I get to the outside of the cage, I sit down and I start spoon feeding him baby food through the bars. And he wakes up. That's the end of the dream. Well, the same week, Matt, my boyfriend, comes and he tells me, I've had the same dream 3 nights in a row. Okay. He says, we're in the grocery store. And I'm like tripping already. And so he says, we're in the grocery store and we have a toddler at our feet. And I have to he has to walk off to go get something. And when he comes back, I'm standing there with Mesa. Mesa bends down, picks up our baby, and the 3 of us walk off and leave Matt behind. So I end up writing Mesa, and I tell him, look, I'm not ready to ask this of you, but I need you to know, like, one day I'm going to have to ask you to quit writing me and to promise to never come find me. Like, Matt and I will probably get married and have kids and open our own studio. And the response was, everything, he writes back, and he says, everything I touch turns to shit, and I don't want to ruin your life. So please respect this. This is my last letter. Ooh, I lost it. Like, he was the one I couldn't let go. And so I immediately wrote him back, and I was like, hey, don't do this. If you love me, we will figure it out. And I'm going to write you every single day until you write me back. And so I started making plans. You know, before I moved to Mississippi, I had sold my Jeep so that I could pay my taxes. And Matt and I, you know, we work together, live together, so we just ride in one car. And so, you know, I'm writing him every day. And a couple days goes by and I go buy a car. And, you know, Matt's upset that I'm buying a car. Like, what are you buying this car for? And I'm like, look, I'm stuck. What if I don't want to be here? Like, I need to have my freedom. And that was on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm writing Mesa. I'm telling him, look, I'm leaving on Sunday. I'm telling Matt tonight, I'm leaving on Sunday. I'm packing my things. I'm getting our, like, money situated. And then on Saturday, I go to the tattoo shop and I pack up all my shit. Sunday morning, I meet up with some friends. We have breakfast. And I'm driving out. And the whole time that I'm leaving, I'm like, what are you doing? You're fucking up your life. What are you doing? You're fucking up your life. What are you doing? You're fucking up your life. Don't do this to yourselves. Like, this will just ruin your life. The things that you tell yourself are definitely going to affect you physically. So the next day I started getting sick. And every time I've ended a relationship, I've got sick. And so I didn't really worry about it too much. But my sister happened to be at my biological father's house, which I don't really have very much of a relationship with him. That's a whole different thing. But my sister was there. It was a halfway point from Mississippi to Denver. So I end up going to my father's house for a couple days, and my sister canceled her flight and drove back with me. And I had given Mesa a letter saying, hey, here's my phone number. You can keep me company while I'm on the road. And we get back to Denver. And this day, Mesa, or my sister, was at the car lot, like buying a new car. And my phone's ringing. And it says prison phone or something like that, to that effect. I knew it was him. But I was too chicken to answer the phone. So later that night, we get back to my sister's house, and he's calling again. And so I like screw up my courage, and I go in my room, and I answer the phone, and his voice is just like the perfect voice for my ears. You know, just, it couldn't have been better. But I'm still sick. You know, like, I still just got this, like, digestive issue going on, and I am expected in Vegas. I got a job in Vegas, so I pack up my things, I go to Vegas, and I'm staying with a friend of mine that I used to work with in San Diego. And but I'm so sick. You know, I always work 12-hour days before this, but I'm so freaking sick that I can't even work 5 hours a day. And I'm just like eating Xanax, trying to like go to sleep and not be in pain. And I'm going through it. I'm going through it because Matt wants me to come back. And then I'm talking to Mesa, and like talking to Mesa on the phone. I don't know if you ever experienced something like this, but it's like being on drugs. You know, you're like, your body is tingling. It's like this feeling of euphoria. And the letters changed. Now we're kind of writing each other these sexy letters. And oh my gosh, it's just like exhilarating. But I'm fucking sick. And I can't get my act together, you know, and I don't know what to do. I even went back to Denver. I packed up my shit for a third time and went back to Denver. And when I was in Denver for a minute, I was feeling a little better, so I went back to Vegas. I go back to Vegas, fourth time moving in like 1 month. And, but I'm going through it with Matt and Mesa, and I don't know what to do. And I'm just kind of tormenting myself with this indecision. And you know, I thought that it had been a couple months. Mesa said that it was only a few weeks. But so this friend of mine that I was staying with, it was him and his wife and their 2 daughters. And their house was nasty. Like, I had to buy a vacuum just to vacuum my bedroom and the path to my bathroom. And I'm an introvert, so I'm happy to be alone. And I don't really, like, because I wasn't well at the time, I wouldn't really, like, be hanging out with them or anything like that. But one week, they went to Disneyland for the whole week, and they had 2 little dogs. So I'm, like, trying to sit on the edge of their nasty couch watching TV, which I hadn't ever really watched TV. You know, I worked 12-hour days for 15 years. And so I'm sitting on the edge of their gross couch, watching stupid TV that I'm not interested in. And maybe about 10 feet away goes this spider. I mean, this thing was huge. And I'm like, whoa, what do I do? And I find that I don't kill spiders now, but there's this baseboard leaning up against the wall. And so I go and I grab the baseboard and I javelin the spider. And like 500 babies fly off this bitch. I'm just like freaking out. You know, it's on the carpet. I'm about to burn the house down. So I go into the kitchen and I find some chemicals that I spray on the spiders. But I'm like in a meltdown mode, you know, like, is this my life? Like, this is going to be my life for the next 16 years? Like, staying with a friend because you can't afford to live? Like, you know, so I go get my pad of paper and I start writing Mesa a letter. And I'm telling him, like, I'm so sorry, I'm not strong enough. You know, Matt loves me and he wants me to come back and I love him. You know, like, I just wanted to quit being sick. Like, I just couldn't imagine that this was going to be my life for the next 15, 16 years. And just as I'm writing, there's just like tears like hitting the page because I know what I'm about to do. And anyways, I finished the letter and I put it in an envelope and I address it, and then I turned my phone off because he was calling me every day at 6 a.m. and I didn't want to have to think about it. And I just ate some Xanax and I went to sleep. And then for a few days he's calling and he's calling and he's calling and I'm not answering the phone. And I just am waiting for him to get my letter, you know. And he's got one of his homeboys calling me at the studio, and I tell my guy that I work with, you know, tell him I'm busy. And then I get a text message from his sister. And I tell her, look, I can't make a good decision for myself when I'm talking to him. And she says, yep, that sounds like my brother. And so I guess she told him and he quit calling. And anyways, Thanksgiving is coming around again. So I go see my family, and when I get there, oh, my sister is like, whoa, what is wrong with you? Like, I had probably dropped 40 plus pounds just from being sick. And, you know, when you're sick like that, you look like death. So my sister is like super concerned for me. And she tells me, oh, I want you to start this dating website. I don't want a dating website. What the hell? Like, I have 2 guys I could have if I wanted them. Like, I'm not trying to talk to anybody else. She's like, look, it's just a distraction. I'll pay for it. It's just to get your mind off of this. And then she says, but you need to start writing Mesa again because he makes you happy. So I sent him a book from Amazon, and you can put a little note in the package. And it just said, I could use a friend if you still are one. And he told me later, you know, that he used to sit down and write me back immediately. But after he got the little note that said I could use a friend, that he had to carry it around with him for a couple weeks trying to decide what he was going to do. You know, because this was not an easy thing. And he finally writes me back, and I can't remember, you know, really how long it took him to call me. But it was after Thanksgiving. So, you know, mid-December, he writes me back or he calls. And I had previously told Matt to quit talking to me. Like, I was just so flustered with everything, going back and forth, that I had to just, when I cut off Mesa, I cut off Matt. I was just like, I just wanted it to not be sick. I just needed to, like, get some peace in my life. And anyways, growing up Jewish, I always went to the movie theater on Christmas. So Christmas Day, I'm standing in the line, in the concession line, and my phone rings, and it's Matt, and my heart just like falls into my stomach. You know, like, I just can't start this again. I can't do this to Mesa. Like, I just started talking to him again, and I'm just trying to build trust with him again. And so I keep things real short with Matt, like, Merry Christmas, tell your family I said hi, how's my dog? Because I had left my puppy there because I felt guilty for leaving him. But anyways, I get off the phone with him and I move on. Like, I'm just focusing on Mesa now. And, you know, some months are going by. And I think that I went to go see him for the first time in March. And that was a pretty cool experience. Like, except I robbed myself because, of course, I took some Xanax before I went. And so I'm sitting in the chair just like, cool, as a cucumber. And Mesa comes in, and he's not visibly shaking, but his collar was like vibrating a little bit. And when you go, you're sitting in a chair kind of like this with a little table in front of you, and he's sitting across from me, and we're like leaned in as close as we can be, and just like almost fingertip touching, you know, but they don't want you to touch, so they're like on you like a hawk over in Atwater. But so when I left that day, I've never had this happen after this, but our very first day, I had a woman speak to me when we were leaving, and she tells me, oh my gosh, you guys are so cute, how long have you been together? And I have to tell her, we just met today. But it's like obvious that we're like crazy in love, you know? So she just looks at me with this like shocked look on her face. And I saw him all weekend. You can go 3 days. At that time, you could go Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Things are different now, but so I think it was April 10th, maybe, you know, a month later or so. Mesa calls me, and it's late. You know, he's about to lock down, but I'm tattooing, and he's calling, and it don't matter. Like, if he calls, we're taking a 15-minute break. That's just what it was. So I get up and I go outside, and you know how you could hear somebody when they're like emotional, you could hear it in their voice. And so I'm like, what's wrong? And he's like, well, I just got this letter from you, and I was going to write you back, but I couldn't write you back. I just had to call you and talk to you about it. And I'm like, okay. Well, I had sent him a letter that was like full of what ifs, you know, what if this, what if that. And we just decided that conversation that night, no matter what, there's no more what ifs. And we're just going to make this happen. So I think that was April 10th, 2010. And not too long after that, I moved back to Denver. I went and I helped my mom like close down her home. And then the following spring, I think maybe April or May 2011, I moved to Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City is where Mesa's family lives. And I had met one of his brothers in Las Vegas. But yeah, I moved here because I wanted him to be able to have his family when he came home. And I wanted to build my career here. I wanted to create a stable life for us. You know, I didn't want to be starting over when he's starting over. That's crazy. So yeah, I moved here in 2011, and I've pretty much been here ever since. And the brother Mitana that I met in Las Vegas, his birthday was in June. His birthday is June 24th. And he invited me to come to his birthday and meet the family. And so that was the first time that I went, and I like became a part of his family. And, you know, just the next month his sister got married, and so they invited me to that. And I met his niece over there, and I don't think that she really knew that I wasn't like really in the family yet. But she's the one that started inviting me to everything. And he has another younger brother, Sabat and Kendrick, and Christy and I became pretty close. And yeah, so I've been here ever since. And that's my story. Welcome to the USP.